Standing at my father's graveside, watching his casket lower into the ground, my stepmother Vivian chose that exact moment to announce to all 47 family members that I wasn't his real daughter. But when Dad's lawyer pulled out a sealed envelope and said, "Sterling left something for this exact scenario," I watched the blood drain from her face. The cemetery was quiet except for the mechanical whir of the lowering device and my Aunt Greta's soft crying. The October air bit through my black dress, but I barely felt it. I was numb from 3 days of accepting condolences. Making arrangements and pretending Vivian's barely concealed satisfaction didn't make me want to scream. "Before we let Sterling rest," Vivian said, stepping forward in her designer black suit that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments, "there's something everyone needs to know about Brooke." My name on her lips sounded like poison. She'd waited until this exact moment, when Dad couldn't defend me, when I was at my most vulnerable, when our entire family was gathered. The calculation of it made my stomach turn. This girl, she pointed at me like I was evidence in a court case, has been living a lie for 32 years. She's not Sterling's biological daughter. The gasps came in waves. Uncle Theodore, Dad's brother, dropped his prayer book into the mud. My cousin Mallory grabbed my arm. Someone behind me whispered, "Oh my God," but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what was happening at my father's funeral. "You're lying," I managed to say, but my voice sounded strange and distant, like it belonged to someone else. "Am I?" Vivian pulled out a folder she'd been hiding under her coat. "Sterling's blood type was O negative. Brooke here is AB positive. It's genetically impossible for him to be her father. I have the medical records right here." My stepbrother Dexter, all 6 feet of him in his $1,000 suit, stood beside his mother with a smirk that made me want to throw mud on his polished shoes. "Sorry, sis," he said, dragging out the word like it was a joke. "Guess you're not really family after all. Mom's already talked to lawyers about the will." The ground felt like it was tilting. My father had been dead for exactly 3 days, and they were already trying to erase me from his life. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who walked me down the hallway on my first day of teaching, who called me every Sunday night just to hear about my week, and Vivian was standing here at his grave, telling everyone he wasn't really my father. "How dare you?" my Aunt Greta finally found her voice. "At his funeral, Vivian. Have you no shame?" "I'm just telling the truth," Vivian said, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she'd perfected over 8 years of marriage to my father. "Everyone deserves to know that Sterling's real legacy belongs to his actual blood, to Dexter." That's when Mr. Holbrook cleared his throat. He'd been standing quietly by the large oak tree, holding his briefcase like it contained nuclear codes. Eugene Holbrook had been Dad's lawyer and friend for 20 years. He'd been at my high school graduation, my college graduation, even my first school's parent-teacher night when I was nervous about meeting families. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, his deep voice cutting through the chaos like a blade, "before you continue this spectacle, perhaps we should discuss what Sterling left in my care." The smug confidence on Vivian's face cracked just slightly. "What are you talking about?" Mr. Holbrook walked forward, every step measured and deliberate. His gray suit was impeccable despite the morning drizzle, his expression carved from stone. Sterling anticipated this might happen. 6 months ago, he came to my office with very specific instructions and a sealed package. "This is ridiculous," Vivian sputtered, but I noticed her fingers tightening on the folder. "He said," Mr. Holbrook continued, now standing directly between Vivian and me, and I quote, "If Vivian tries to claim Brooke isn't my daughter at any point after my death, you are to immediately read this letter and play this recording." The cemetery went so quiet I could hear the distant traffic on Maple Street. 47 members of the Caldwell family stood frozen like statues, waiting to see what would happen next. Even the funeral director, standing respectfully by his hearse, leaned forward slightly. Mr. Holbrook reached into his briefcase and pulled out a large manila envelope with Dad's handwriting on it. "To be opened only under circumstances discussed." Below that, in his careful script, "My daughter, Brooke, is my greatest achievement." My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. Even in death, even in this moment of attack, Dad was still protecting me, still calling me his daughter. "This is theatrical nonsense," Vivian said, but her voice had lost its edge. "I have medical records." "As do I," Mr. Holbrook said simply. He also pulled out a small digital recorder. Sterling was nothing if not thorough. He left both written documentation and his own recorded testimony. "So tell me, Mrs. Caldwell, would you like me to read the letter first, or shall we hear Sterling's own voice explain the truth about who is and isn't his biological child?" The emphasis he put on those last words made Vivian step back. Dexter's smirk finally disappeared, replaced by confusion. He looked at his mother, then at Mr. Holbrook, then at me. "This is a trick," Vivian said, but her voice was shaking now. "You're bluffing." Mr. Holbrook's expression didn't change. "Sterling knew you'd gathered those medical records, Vivian. He knew about your plans. He knew about quite a lot, actually. That's why he made sure I had everything needed to protect his daughter from what he called posthumous character assassination." I found my voice stronger now, fueled by the knowledge that Dad had seen this coming. "Read the letter, Mr. Holbrook. Let everyone hear what my father had to say." The lawyer broke the seal on the envelope with formal precision. The sound seemed to echo across the headstones. He pulled out several pages covered in Dad's distinctive handwriting, along with what looked like official documents. "Wait," Vivian said, her face now the color of the gray October sky. "We don't need to do this here. We can discuss this privately." "Oh, but you already made it public," Aunt Greta said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You started this show, Vivian. Let's see how it ends." Mr. Holbrook adjusted his reading glasses, cleared his throat once more, and began to read the words my father had written 6 months ago, when he was still alive, still laughing, still calling me every Sunday night, but somehow knowing this moment would come. "To my beloved daughter Brooke," he began. And I knew, even before hearing another word, that Dad was about to reveal truths that would change everything. My father Sterling wasn't just my dad, he was my anchor. After Mom died when I was 7, he raised me alone for 15 years before Vivian swept into our lives like a tornado in designer heels. I remember the day he taught me to ride a bike in our driveway, his strong hand steadying me while he ran alongside, his work boots hitting the pavement in rhythm with my pedaling. "Brooke, sweetheart, I've got you. I'll never let you fall," he'd said. And even when he finally let go, I knew he was still there, ready to catch me if I needed him. Dad owned 3 successful hardware stores across town, Caldwell and Family Hardware, each one a testament to his belief that good tools and good advice could fix almost anything. Every Saturday morning until I left for college, we'd visit each location together. It was our ritual, as sacred as Sunday church. He'd introduce me to every employee, every regular customer, always the same way. "This is my daughter Brooke. She's going to be a teacher someday." The pride in his voice made me stand taller, made me believe I could become anything I wanted. The store smelled like sawdust and metal, like possibility and hard work. Dad would let me help with inventory, teaching me to count washers and sort screws, while telling me stories about Grandpa Caldwell, who'd started the first store with nothing but a $1,000 loan and determination. "This will all be yours someday, Brookie," he'd say, using my childhood nickname. "Not just the stores, but the legacy, the reputation, the trust people have in our name." Mom had been gone for 15 years when Vivian appeared. I was 22, fresh out of college, starting my first teaching job at Riverside Elementary. Dad met her at a Chamber of Commerce dinner. She was new in town, she said, starting over after a difficult divorce. She had a young son named Dexter, just starting high school, and she was looking for stability, for a good man who could be a father figure. Dad fell hard. After years of casual dates that never went anywhere, of well-meaning setups from friends that always ended with him saying, "She's lovely, but she's not Angela," suddenly he was bringing Vivian to Sunday dinners, taking her to the stores, introducing her to our life. She was beautiful in that polished way that made other women feel underdressed, blonde hair that was never out of place, nails that were always perfectly manicured, clothes that whispered money even when she claimed to be struggling. She laughed at Dad's hardware store jokes, praised his business sense, and told him constantly how lucky she felt to have found him. "I want you to like her, Brooke," Dad had said one evening, just the 2 of us on the back porch. "I know nobody can replace your mother. I'm not trying to do that. But Vivian makes me happy, and Dexter needs stability. That boy's had a rough time with his father abandoning them. So I tried. I really tried. I welcomed Vivian, helped Dexter with his homework, included them in our traditions. But something was off from the beginning. The way Vivian's smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. How she'd rearranged the living room photos so pictures of Mom were less visible. The way she'd mentioned the store's value during casual conversations, always followed by a laugh and, not that it matters, of course. After they married, the changes came slowly at first. "Brooke, honey," she'd say with her saccharine smile, "wouldn't you be more comfortable eating in your room while Dexter and I help Sterling with the business plans?" Or, "Oh, did Sterling not mention? We're changing the Saturday store visits. Dexter needs that time with his new father." Each exclusion was small, reasonable on its own, but together they pushed me further from the center of my father's life. Dexter was worse. At 15, he was already taller than me, with his mother's sharp features and calculating eyes. He'd make comments about being Dad's only son, about carrying on the Caldwell name, about how the stores needed a man's touch to stay competitive. Dad never heard these comments. Dexter was too smart for that. Around Dad, he was the perfect stepson, eager to learn, respectful, grateful. But Dad wasn't fooled, not entirely. He made sure our Saturday tradition continued, just earlier in the morning. "Nobody replaces my Brookie," he'd said firmly when Vivian suggested I was too old for such things. He kept my pictures prominent in his office, kept my childhood room exactly as I'd left it, kept calling me every Sunday night without fail. 3 weeks before his death, Dad called me over for Sunday dinner, just the two of us. Vivian was at her sister's in Nevada, taking Dexter to look at colleges. Dad made his famous pot roast, the one Mom taught him to make when they first married. We ate in comfortable silence for a while before he spoke. "Brooke, there are things I need to tell you," he said, gripping my hand across the table. His fingers were still strong, still stained with oil from the stores, despite Vivian's complaints about his hands. "But not yet. The time isn't right. Just remember, no matter what anyone says after I'm gone, you're my daughter. Blood doesn't make family, love does. And I've loved you since the moment your mother told me she was pregnant." "Dad, you're scaring me. Are you sick?" "No, sweetheart, just getting my affairs in order. A man my age needs to be prepared." He squeezed my hand tighter. "I've made sure you're protected. Mr. Holbrook has everything. Trust him if anything happens. And remember, you're a Caldwell, my daughter, my true heir. Nothing and no one can change that." 4 days later, the massive heart attack took him. Quick, the doctors said. Merciful. He was at his original store, the one Grandpa started, checking inventory early in the morning. They found him sitting at his desk, a photo of Mom and me from my college graduation in his hand. The funeral was beautiful, exactly what Dad would have wanted. His employees formed an honor guard, 6 men from each store, their work shirts pressed and clean under dark jackets. The church overflowed with people whose lives he'd touched, customers he'd helped for decades, little league teams he'd sponsored, families who'd never forgotten his kindness when they couldn't afford repairs. His favorite hymns played softly, Amazing Grace and I'll Fly Away, the ones he'd hummed while organizing bolts and checking inventory. I gave the eulogy, my teacher's voice somehow carrying through the massive church despite my breaking heart. I told them about Saturday mornings at the stores, about Dad teaching me that business wasn't about money but about trust, about how he'd once stayed open until midnight on Christmas Eve because Mrs. Patterson needed a specific wrench to fix her grandson's bike. My voice broke only once when I mentioned how he'd called every employee by name, knew their spouses, their children, their struggles. Sterling Caldwell believed tools could fix things, I'd said, gripping the podium, but his greatest tool was love. He fixed broken hearts with patience, broken spirits with kindness, and broken families with acceptance. He was my father, my hero, my best friend. Vivian sat in the front row wearing a black Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people spent on their entire funeral wardrobe. Dexter beside her kept checking his phone, barely concealing his boredom. They'd wanted to speak too, but somehow never got around to preparing anything. "Too grief-stricken," Vivian had told the minister, though I'd heard her on the phone that morning discussing property assessments with someone. The graveside service was smaller. Family mostly, plus Dad's closest friends and longest employees. The cemetery sat on a hill overlooking the town, where you could see all 3 stores if you knew where to look. October had turned the trees brilliant orange and gold. Dad's favorite season. God's way of showing off, he used to say. As the pastor finished his final prayer, as we all whispered, Amen, as the funeral director stepped forward to hand out roses for the casket, Vivian stood up. Not to take a rose, not to say goodbye, but to make an announcement. Before we leave Sterling to rest, she said, her voice cutting through the reverent silence like a chainsaw through pine, there's something everyone needs to know, something Sterling kept hidden because of misguided loyalty. Brooke has been living a lie her entire life. My Aunt Greta gasped so sharply I thought she might faint. Uncle Theodore, Dad's younger brother, dropped his prayer book into the mud. The pastor looked bewildered, unsure whether to intervene. Vivian continued, now looking directly at me with eyes cold as January ice. I found documents while going through Sterling's papers, medical records he'd hidden in his desk. Brooke isn't his biological daughter. Her mother had an affair. Sterling knew all along but kept this secret, letting this girl inherit what should belong to his real family, to Dexter, his actual blood. That's not true, I shouted, my legs trembling so hard my cousin Mallory had to grab my arm to keep me upright. Dad would have told me if that were true. We didn't have secrets. Would he? Vivian pulled out a folder she'd been hiding under her coat. Your blood types don't even match, dear. Sterling was O negative. It's right here on his medical alert bracelet, the one he wore every day. She held up Dad's bracelet, the one they'd removed at the hospital, the one I'd bought him for Father's Day 10 years ago. You're AB positive. I have your blood donation record from that teacher's blood drive you did last spring. It's genetically impossible for Sterling to be your father. The crowd erupted. Whispers turned to discussions, turned to arguments. Is that true? The blood types don't lie. Poor Brooke. How could Sterling keep such a secret? Dexter stood beside his mother, his smirk so satisfied I wanted to scream. Sorry, sis, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, dragging out the word like it physically hurt him to say it. Guess you're not family after all. Mom's already talked to lawyers about contesting the will. The stores should go to actual blood family, to me. You've been planning this, I said, my voice stronger now, fueled by rage. Dad's been dead 3 days and you're trying to steal his legacy? Steal? Vivian's laugh was sharp and bitter. We're trying to preserve it for his real family. Sterling was too soft-hearted to do what needed to be done while he was alive, but I won't let his misguided sympathy give away what belongs to Dexter. My Uncle Theodore found his voice. Vivian, this is obscene. The man isn't even in the ground yet. The truth doesn't care about timing, she replied. I have documentation, medical records, blood type charts, even found a letter in Angela's things that Sterling had kept, talking about a coworker named Patrick she'd grown close to before Brooke was born. Each word was a calculated strike, designed to destroy not just my inheritance, but my entire identity. The mourners were dividing now, some moving closer to me in support, others stepping back as if I'd become contaminated by this revelation. Sterling raised her, Aunt Greta said firmly. That makes her his daughter. Legally, perhaps, Vivian said, but morally, ethically? Should the Caldwell family legacy go to someone who doesn't carry Caldwell blood? When there's Dexter, who Sterling chose to raise these last 8 years, who actually learned the business, who carries the chromosome to pass on the family name. That's when Mr. Holbrook cleared his throat. Mrs. Caldwell, Mr. Holbrook said, his voice cutting through the chaos with the authority of someone who'd spent 40 years in courtrooms. Before you continue this display, perhaps we should discuss the letter Sterling left with me. Vivian's confidence wavered like a candle flame in wind. What letter? Mr. Holbrook approached the grave with measured steps, his polished shoes somehow avoiding the mud that had caught everyone else. He carried his briefcase like it contained state secrets, his face revealing nothing. Eugene Holbrook had been more than Dad's lawyer. He'd been his friend since before I was born, the best man at my parents' wedding, the one who'd helped Dad navigate Mom's estate after cancer took her. Sterling anticipated this might happen, Mr. Holbrook said, now standing where the pastor had been, commanding the same reverence. He came to me 6 months ago with specific instructions and a sealed package. He was quite thorough in his preparations. "This is ridiculous," Vivian sputtered, her knuckles white as she clutched her folder of evidence. "I have proof right here. Medical records don't lie." "Indeed they don't," Mr. Holbrook agreed calmly. He pulled out a large manila envelope and a small digital recorder from his briefcase. Sterling said, and I quote, "If Vivian tries to claim Brooke isn't my daughter at any point after my death, you are to immediately read this letter and play this recording. Do it publicly, Eugene. Don't let her poison people's minds in private." The mourners pressed closer, forming a tight circle around us. Even the funeral director abandoned professional distance to lean in. Dexter's smirk had disappeared completely, replaced by confusion as he looked between his mother and the lawyer. "This is some kind of trick," Vivian said, but her voice had lost its commanding tone. "You're bluffing." "Sterling knew about your research, Vivian," Mr. Holbrook continued. "He knew you'd been to the hospital requesting his medical records. He knew you'd accessed Brooke's blood donation information through your friend who works at the Red Cross. Yes, he knew about Patricia helping you. He knew about your meetings with estate lawyers 3 months before his death." My mind was racing. Dad had known? He'd known what Vivian was planning and hadn't told me? But then I remembered that dinner 3 weeks ago, his grip on my hand, his words about being prepared, about trusting Mr. Holbrook. If Sterling knew I had concerns about Brooke's parentage, then he should have addressed them while alive, Vivian said, trying to regain control, not through some theatrical reading after his death. "Oh, but he did address them," Mr. Holbrook said. "He addressed them quite thoroughly. He spent considerable time and resources investigating not just Brooke's parentage, but everyone's in this family. The results were illuminating." The way he said "everyone's" made Vivian step backward, her heel sinking into the soft ground. Dexter moved away from his mother slightly, uncertainty crossing his features for the first time. "Shall I read the letter first, or would you prefer to hear the recording?" Mr. Holbrook asked, holding up both items. "Sterling was specific that I should give you the choice, Vivian. He said you always like to feel in control." "I don't have to listen to this," Vivian said, starting to turn away. "No, you don't," Mr. Holbrook agreed, "but everyone else does. And if you leave now, you won't hear Sterling's evidence about Dexter's parentage. You won't hear about the DNA test he had done. You won't hear about Rex." Vivian froze. The name Rex had turned her to stone. "Who's Rex?" Dexter asked, his voice cracking slightly. I found my voice then, stronger than I'd expected. "Read the letter, Mr. Holbrook. Let everyone hear what my father had to say." My Aunt Greta moved to stand beside me, her hand finding mine. Uncle Theodore flanked my other side. The Caldwell family was literally closing ranks around me, and that simple gesture made my eyes burn with unshed tears. Mr. Holbrook broke the seal on the envelope with formal precision. Inside were several pages of Dad's distinctive handwriting, the same careful script that had written, "Great job," on my report cards, "Love you, Brookie" on birthday cards, "So proud" on the photo from my college graduation. "Before I begin," Mr. Holbrook said, "I should note that Sterling had all of these documents notarized and witnessed. He also had copies sent to 3 separate law firms to be released to the media if anyone contests what I'm about to read." Vivian's face had gone from pale to gray. "You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening anyone," Mr. Holbrook replied mildly. "I'm simply following Sterling's very detailed instructions. He wanted to make sure the truth came out, all of it, if anyone tried to hurt his daughter after he was gone." He adjusted his reading glasses and cleared his throat. The cemetery was so quiet I could hear the flag on Dad's casket fluttering in the breeze. "To my beloved daughter Brooke, and to all present," Mr. Holbrook began reading, and Dad's words seemed to fill the air, like his presence had filled every room, warm and strong and absolutely certain. "If you're hearing this, then Vivian has done exactly what I feared. She's tried to use partial truths to destroy my daughter's life. So let me share the complete truth. documented and verified, about the parentage of everyone involved in this sad drama. Dexter had gone very still. Vivian looked like she might run, but she was surrounded by mourners, trapped by the very audience she'd wanted for her revelation. Yes, I knew about the blood types, Mr. Holbrook continued reading. I've known since Brooke was 8 years old, when she needed emergency surgery after falling from her bike. My mind flashed back to that accident, the emergency room, Dad's terrified face as they wheeled me into surgery, how he'd prayed harder than I'd ever seen him pray. Mr. Holbrook continued reading Dad's letter, his voice steady and clear. What Vivian doesn't know is that I had a vasectomy 3 years before I met her, following my late wife Angela's difficult pregnancy with Brooke. The pregnancy nearly killed Angela, and we decided one child was blessing enough. The vasectomy was reversed when Vivian and I decided to try for children, unsuccessfully as it turned out. However, Dexter was already 5 when I met Vivian. I have DNA proof that Dexter is not my biological son, but I raised him as my own because that's what fathers do. Vivian's face had gone from white to green. That's impossible. You're making this up. Sterling never said anything about a vasectomy. There's more, Mr. Holbrook said, continuing to read. I knew from the day I married Vivian that Dexter wasn't mine. It was mathematically impossible. But I loved that boy anyway, tried to raise him right, tried to teach him the value of hard work and honesty, though I'm not sure those lessons took hold. Dexter stumbled backward, his confident facade crumbling. Mom, what is he talking about? Vivian couldn't even look at her son. Her carefully constructed plan was collapsing around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. Mr. Holbrook held up the digital recorder. Shall we hear Sterling's own words now? Without waiting for an answer, he pressed play. Dad's voice filled the cemetery, strong and clear despite coming from a small device. It was like he was standing right there with us, protecting me one last time. Hello, everyone. If you're hearing this, then Vivian has tried to hurt my daughter after I'm gone, so let me set the record straight. The recording had that slight echo of his office at the main store, and I could picture him sitting at his desk, surrounded by invoices and family photos, carefully speaking these words. Vivian, I know Dexter isn't mine. I've known since the day you accidentally left your diary open on our bed, writing about Dexter's real father, your personal trainer, Rex, who you were still seeing the first year of our marriage. Yes, I know about the Tuesday afternoon yoga, sessions that were nothing of the sort. I know about the money you sent him monthly, calling it fitness training on our credit card statements. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dexter's face had gone pale as his mother's designer dress. Mom? Dexter's voice cracked like he was 14 again. Is this true? Dad's recording continued. I have the DNA test right here, conducted 2 years ago when Dexter needed blood work for his college sports physical. The lab was very discreet, very professional. 0% probability of paternity. But I love that boy anyway because love isn't about DNA. I tried to be the father he never had, though Vivian made sure to poison that well every chance she got. Turn it off, Vivian whispered, but her voice had no power left. Now, about Brooke being AB positive while I'm O negative. Yes, that's true. But what you don't know, Vivian, is that Brooke's mother, Angela, was adopted. Her biological father wasn't the man who raised her. When Angela was dying, she told me everything. She'd been adopted as an infant by the Mitchells, who loved her completely and were the only parents she ever knew or wanted. But during her cancer treatment, she needed family medical history. She found her biological father, a professor named David Brennan, who had AB positive blood. My legs nearly gave out. Mom had been adopted? The grandparents I'd loved, who died when I was young, weren't her biological parents. But they were her real parents, the ones who'd raised her, loved her, just like Dad was my real father, regardless of blood. Angela made me promise never to complicate Brooke's life with this information, Dad's voice continued. She said the Mitchells were her parents in every way that mattered, and she wanted Brooke to honor their memory, not get confused with biological relatives who were strangers. But since you're forcing this issue, Vivian, here's the complete truth. Brooke is absolutely my biological daughter. We had a DNA test done when she was 8 during that emergency surgery. I needed to know for medical reasons. 99.98% probability of paternity. Mr. Holbrook pulled out another document, holding it up for everyone to see. Here's the certified DNA test, dated 24 years ago, with Sterling's signature and the hospital's seal. I have the original. Copies have been filed with the court. Dad's voice returned. I'm also leaving a second letter for Brooke alone, explaining why I never told her about her mother's adoption. But Vivian, if you're forcing this issue, know that I've instructed Mr. Holbrook to ensure the will stands as written. Brooke inherits the stores and the main house. You receive the beach condo and your settlement as specified in our prenuptial agreement. Yes, I know you thought you destroyed your copy, but lawyers keep excellent records. Dexter gets his college fund, which I maintained despite knowing the truth, because he's innocent in your deceptions. One more thing. Vivian, the recording you thought you deleted from our home security system, the one where you told Rex on the phone that you'd make sure the biological daughter gets nothing after the old fool dies, I have copies. 3 copies, actually. One with Mr. Holbrook, one in my safety deposit box, and one with the district attorney's office in case anything suspicious happened to me. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the birds had stopped singing. 47 members of the Caldwell family stood frozen, processing what they'd just heard. The funeral director looked like he'd witnessed a murder rather than a burial. I also want everyone to know, Dad's voice concluded, softer now, that I forgive Vivian. I forgive her for the affairs, the lies, the schemes. I stayed married to her because I'd made vows and because I hoped she'd change, hoped she'd learn what real love looked like. But mostly, I stayed for Dexter, who needed a father, even if his mother made sure he never respected me. Brooke, sweetheart, if you're listening to this, know that you were the light of my life from the moment you were born. You are my daughter, my legacy, my greatest achievement. Not the stores, not the business, you. I love you, Brookie. Take care of the family name. It's yours by birth, by love, and by right. The recording ended with a soft click that seemed to echo across the cemetery like thunder. Vivian left before the casket was fully lowered, her designer heels sinking into the grass as she stumbled toward her Mercedes. Dexter stood frozen for a moment, looking lost and younger than his 21 years, before running after his mother. The rest of us watched them go in stunned silence, then turned back to finish saying goodbye to Dad properly, the way he deserved. Within a week, Vivian had moved to her sister's house in Nevada. She didn't even pack properly, just grabbed essentials and fled town like it was burning. The movers came later for her things. I watched from the living room window as they loaded her expensive furniture, her designer clothes, her collection of jewelry that Dad had bought her over the years. Each piece had been given with love, received with calculation. Dexter stayed, though. He called me the night after the funeral, his voice broken and small. "Brooke," he said, and I could hear him crying, really crying, not the fake tears he'd produce when trying to manipulate Dad. I didn't know about any of it. About Rex, about the DNA, about what Mom was planning. I swear I didn't know. I know, I said, because somehow I did. Dexter had been cruel, yes, but he'd been shaped by his mother's poison, fed lies with his breakfast cereal. He was my dad too, wasn't he? Dexter continued, his voice cracking. Even though he knew I wasn't his, even though Mom was awful to him, he still came to my games. He still taught me about the business. He still called me son. Yes, I said, remembering all the times Dad had tried to include Dexter, to teach him, to love him despite the boy's resistance. He was your dad. He chose to be your dad every single day. That's what made him amazing. I'm sorry, Dexter whispered, for everything, for how I acted, for what I said at the funeral, for all of it. I'm so sorry. That conversation changed everything. Dexter moved back from his mother's influence and asked if he could help at the stores. Not to take over, not to claim inheritance, just to work, to learn, to honor the man who'd been more of a father to him than anyone else ever had. I gave him a job at the original store, starting at the bottom, just like Dad had made me do when I was 16. Dexter worked hard, harder than I'd ever seen him work at anything. The employees were suspicious at first, remembering his attitude when he'd visited with Vivian, but he won them over with genuine effort and humility. 6 months later, we were having dinner at the house. My house now, though I still couldn't think of it that way. Dexter had become a regular dinner guest, then gradually a friend, then somehow, impossibly, an actual brother. "I found something," he said, pulling out an envelope. "Mom left it behind when she ran. It's from Sterling, dated 2 years ago." The letter was addressed to Dexter in Dad's handwriting. Inside, it said, "Dexter, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need you to know that biology doesn't define us. I'm not your biological father, but I chose to be your dad. It wasn't always easy. You resisted me at every turn, poisoned by your mother's bitterness. But I saw glimpses of who you could be. During that science project we worked on together, when you helped Mrs. Patterson load lumber even though your friends were waiting, when you thought no one was looking and you were kind to the new stock boy. Those moments gave me hope. You're not responsible for your mother's choices or for who your biological father was. You're responsible for who you choose to become. I hope someday you'll understand that love isn't about blood. It's about showing up, staying when it's hard, choosing family every single day. I chose you, Dexter. Despite everything, I chose you. I hope someday you'll choose us back." "Sterling," Dexter cried, reading it. So did I. We sat at Dad's kitchen table, 2 kids who'd lost the only father either of us had ever really known, and finally became the siblings he'd always hoped we'd be. The stores are thriving now. I kept all Dad's employees, and they've embraced both Dexter and me as Sterling's kids. No qualifiers, no real or step, just his kids. Dexter manages the original store now, the one Grandpa Caldwell started, and he's good at it. He has Dad's patience with customers, his memory for names and faces. I still teach 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary. Dad was right. I was meant to be a teacher. But I go to the stores every Saturday morning, just like we used to. Sometimes Dexter joins me. We walk through each location, checking on things, talking to employees and customers, keeping Dad's legacy alive. I found Dad's second letter to me, tucked in my old childhood jewelry box, placed there by Mr. Holbrook the day after the funeral. It was pure Dad, loving, protective, honest. "My dearest Brooke, if you're reading this, Vivian has forced truths into the light that I'd hoped to spare you from. Your mother's adoption doesn't change who your grandparents were, the ones who loved her, who loved you." The Mitchells raised Angela with such love that she never felt the need to find her biological parents until cancer forced her to seek medical history. That's the power of chosen family. What matters most is this: from the moment I first held you, you were mine. Not because of DNA, but because I chose you, fought for you, loved you. Every Saturday at the stores, every homework session, every proud moment at your teaching graduation. That was real. That was us. I kept Vivian's secrets about Dexter because I hoped she'd find her way to being the mother he deserved. I kept your mother's story because she asked me to, but I never kept secrets about my love for you. That was always true, always real, always infinite. Vivian saw dollar signs when she looked at our family. Dexter saw competition. But you, Brookie, you saw what I saw. A legacy of hard work, honesty, and helping neighbors. That's why the stores are yours. Not because of blood, but because you understand what Caldwell really means. Love that boy if you can. He's lost and angry and confused, but there's good in him. I've seen it. Maybe without his mother's poison, he can find it too. Your Dad. Last week marked the first anniversary of Dad's death. Dexter and I visited his grave together. The headstone reads, "Sterling Caldwell, beloved father, love makes family." We placed fresh flowers, yellow roses, his favorite, and stood there in comfortable silence. "He would have loved this," Dexter said quietly. "Us together, no drama." "Yeah," I agreed, "he would have." As we walked back to our cars, Dexter mentioned he'd been seeing a therapist to work through everything. "She says I was emotionally abused," he said, "that Mom used me as a weapon against Sterling. I'm starting to see it now." "Dad saw it then," I replied. "That's why he never gave up on you." "He never gave up on either of us," Dexter corrected. And he was right. Vivian never contested the will. That security recording Dad mentioned must have been particularly damning. We haven't heard from her since she left, though Dexter got a birthday card with no return address and a check he never cashed. Mr. Holbrook still manages the legal affairs for the stores. Last month, he told me Dad had left one more letter to be opened on the 5th anniversary of his death. He said you'd be ready then, Mr. Holbrook explained. Both of you. Because Dad thought of everything. Even in death, he's still protecting us, still teaching us, still showing us that love makes family. Sometimes the most profound love stories aren't romantic. They're between a father and the children he chose to love, regardless of what any DNA test might say. Dad proved that every single day of my life, and even death, couldn't stop him from protecting me one last time. The hardware stores still smell like sawdust and metal, like possibility and hard work. But now they also smell like hope, like second chances, like family that's chosen rather than just born. Dexter and I are building something new from the foundation Dad left us. Not just a business, but a real relationship, the kind Dad always hoped we'd have. That's Dad's true legacy. Not the stores or the money or the property. It's the lesson that family isn't about blood. It's about choosing to love, choosing to stay, choosing to protect each other even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And somewhere, somehow, I know Dad is watching us, proud that his kids, both of them, finally figured it out. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and share it with someone who needs to hear that family is about love, not just DNA. Comment below if you've ever experienced a moment when someone chose to be your family, even without blood ties. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about love, redemption, and the families we choose. Thank you for listening to my story about my dad, Sterling Caldwell, who proved that the strongest bonds aren't always written in our genes, they're written in our hearts.